Chapter 1. The Ambush. The Galactic Starship Odyssey streaked through the inky blackness of space, its sleek silver hull reflecting the distant starlight. Inside the ship's bridge, Captain Aria Vance stood poised and alert, her piercing blue eyes scanning the viewscreen before her. The Odyssey was on a routine patrol mission, but Aria couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in the pit of her stomach. "Captain, I'm detecting strange energy readings emanating from the asteroid field ahead," Lieutenant Zara Rowe reported, her brow furrowed in concentration as she studied the data on her console. Aria turned to face her, a look of concern etched on her face. "Can you be more specific, Lieutenant? What kind of energy readings?" Zara shook her head, frustration evident in her voice. "I can't quite pin it down, ma'am. The readings are erratic and unlike anything in our database." Commander Luke Keller, Aria's trusted first officer, stepped forward, his tall frame casting a shadow across the bridge. "Captain, I recommend we approach with caution. We don't know what we're dealing with here." Aria nodded, her mind already weighing the options. "Agreed, Commander. Helmsman, reduce speed and maintain a safe distance from the asteroid field. Let's try to get a better look at what we're up against." As the Odyssey slowed its approach, the view screen suddenly erupted in a blinding flash of light. The ship shuddered violently, throwing the crew off balance. Aria gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles turning white with the force of her grasp. "Report!" she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're under attack!" Zara cried out, her fingers flying across her console. "Multiple unknown vessels emerging from the asteroid field, weapons hot." The view screen cleared, revealing a swarm of black angular ships, their hulls bristling with advanced weaponry. Aria's heart raced as she realized the gravity of their situation. "Red alert!" she commanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Raise shields and bring all weapon systems online. We need to buy ourselves some time." The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity as the crew rushed to their stations, their faces grim with determination. Luke moved to stand beside Aria, his presence a reassuring constant in the midst of the chaos. "Captain, we're outnumbered and outgunned," he said quietly, his voice laced with concern. "What's our plan?" Aria's mind raced as she considered their options. The Odyssey was a formidable ship, but even she had her limits. They needed to find a way out of this ambush, and fast. "Focus fire on their weapon systems," she ordered, her eyes never leaving the view screen. "And scan the area for any signs of reinforcements. We need to know what we're up against." "Sir!" As the Odyssey returned fire, the bridge shook with the impact of enemy weapons. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and the acrid scent of smoke filled the air. Aria's heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to let fear take hold. She had a crew to protect, and she would stop at nothing to ensure their safety. But even as she rallied her crew, Aria couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much larger. The attackers were too well coordinated, too heavily armed to be mere raiders. There was something else at play here, something that threatened not just the Odyssey, but the very fabric of the galaxy itself. As the battle raged on, Aria knew that she would have to dig deep within herself to find the strength and courage to lead her crew through this crisis. And with each passing moment, she felt a growing sense of determination take root in her heart. She would not let this be the end of their story. The Odyssey would fight on, no matter the cost. Chapter 2. The Mysterious Artifact. The battle had been won, but at a great cost. The Odyssey limped away from the asteroid field, its hull scorched and battered, a testament to the ferocity of the attack. In the aftermath of the chaos, Captain Aria Vance stood on the bridge, her uniform torn and her face smudged with soot. She surveyed the damage reports with a heavy heart, knowing that the road ahead would be long and difficult. "Captain, I think you need to see this," Lieutenant Zara Rowe called out, her voice tight with excitement and trepidation. Aria moved to join her at the science station, her brow furrowed in curiosity. "What is it, Lieutenant?" Zara pointed to the readings on her console, her finger trembling slightly. "During the battle, our sensors detected an unusual energy signature emanating from within the asteroid field. It's unlike anything I've ever seen before." Aria leaned in closer, her eyes scanning the data with rapt attention. The energy signature was indeed strange, a pulsing, almost living thing that seemed to call out to her from across the vastness of space. "Could it be a new type of weapon?" Commander Luke Keller asked, his voice laced with concern. Aria shook her head, a sudden realization dawning on her. "No, I don't think so. Look at the waveform pattern. It's too complex, too structured to be a mere weapon. This is something else entirely." She straightened up, her mind already racing with possibilities. "We need to investigate this further. If there's something out there that could give us an edge against our attackers, we need to find it." Luke frowned, his forehead creased with worry. "Captain, with all due respect, the Odyssey is in no shape for a prolonged mission. We need to get back to base for repairs and regroup with the fleet." Aria turned to face him, her eyes blazing with determination. "I understand your concerns, Commander, but we may not have that luxury. Our attackers are still out there, and they'll be looking for us. We need to stay one step ahead of them." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "I need you to trust me on this, Luke. We've been through a lot together, and I know I can count on you to have my back." Luke held her gaze for a long moment, a silent understanding passing between them. Finally he nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Always, Captain. I'll follow you to the ends of the universe, if that's what it takes." Aria returned his smile, feeling a surge of gratitude and affection for her loyal first officer. She knew that the challenges ahead would test them all, but with Luke by her side, she felt like anything was possible. "Helm, set a course for the asteroid field," she ordered, her voice ringing out across the bridge. "We're going to find out what's out there, and heaven help anyone who tries to stand in our way." As the Odyssey turned back towards the unknown, Aria couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something truly extraordinary. The mysterious artifact called to her, a siren song that she couldn't resist. And though she knew the dangers that lay ahead, she also knew that she would stop at nothing to uncover the truth behind it. But even as she steeled herself for the challenges to come, Aria couldn't help but wonder about the true nature of their enemy. Who were they? And what did they want? And more importantly, what secrets did the artifact hold that could change the course of the galaxy forever? Chapter 3. Deciphering the Past. The Odyssey hung suspended in space, its battered hull silhouetted against the swirling clouds of the asteroid field. In the ship's cargo bay, the mysterious artifact pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly light, casting long shadows across the faces of the crew gathered around it. Captain Aria Vance stood at the center of the group, her eyes fixed on the artifact with a mixture of awe and trepidation. She could feel the weight of her crew's expectations on her shoulders, the unspoken question hanging in the air. What now? "All right, people," she said, her voice cutting through the tense silence. "We need to figure out what this thing is, and what it means for us. Zara, I want you to lead the research team. Find out everything you can about its origins and purpose." Lieutenant Zara Rowe nodded, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Aye, Captain. I'll get right on it." As Zara and her team set to work, Aria turned to Commander Luke Keller, her brow furrowed in thought. "Luke, I need you to coordinate with engineering. Make sure the Odyssey is ready for whatever comes next. We can't afford any more surprises." Luke hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. "Captain, are you sure this is the right course of action? We're still vulnerable, and we don't know what we're dealing with here." Aria met his gaze, her voice firm but understanding. "I know it's a risk, Luke, but we don't have a choice. We need answers, and this artifact is our best lead. I need you to trust me on this." Luke held her gaze for a long moment before nodding, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I do trust you, Aria. I always have." As the crew set to work, Aria couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something momentous. The artifact seemed to call to her, its secrets tantalizingly close, yet just out of reach. Hours turned into days as Zara and her team worked tirelessly to unravel the artifact's mysteries. And then, just when Aria was beginning to lose hope, they made a breakthrough. "Captain, you need to see this," Zara said, her voice trembling with excitement as she burst onto the bridge. Aria followed her back to the cargo bay, her heart pounding in her chest. When she saw what Zara had discovered, she felt a chill run down her spine. The artifact was a key, a gateway to an ancient civilization that had once spanned the stars, a civilization that had fought a war so terrible, so devastating, that it had nearly destroyed them all. "This changes everything," Aria breathed, her mind reeling with the implications. "If this is true, then our attackers may be connected to this ancient war somehow. We need to find out more." But even as she spoke the words, Aria couldn't shake the feeling of unease that crept over her. The artifact's secrets were powerful, dangerous even, and she knew that unlocking them would come at a price. As the crew continued their research, tensions began to rise. Some argued that they should destroy the artifact, that its power was too great to be controlled. Others believed that it held the key to their survival, that they needed to harness its secrets to stand a chance against their enemies. And through it all, Aria found herself questioning her own past, her own choices. She had always prided herself on being a strong, decisive leader, but now she found herself doubting her every move. As the Odyssey hurtled through space, its crew poised on the brink of a revelation that could change the course of history, Aria knew that she would have to confront her own demons if she hoped to lead them through the darkness ahead. For the artifact's secrets were not the only ones that threatened to tear them apart. And as the shadows grew longer and the danger mounted, Aria began to realize that the greatest threat to their survival might just come from within. Chapter 4. The Betrayal. The Odyssey drifted through the void, its crew on edge as they worked to unravel the secrets of the ancient artifact. Captain Aria Vance paced the length of the bridge, her mind racing with possibilities and fears alike. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. Suddenly the ship's alarms blared to life, red lights flashing across the consoles. "Captain, we have a breach in the cargo bay," Lieutenant Zara Rowe shouted, her fingers flying across her keyboard. Aria's heart sank as she realized the implications. "Seal off the area and send a security team to investigate. I want to know what's going on down there." But even as she gave the order, a sickening realization dawned on her. There was only one person who had access to the cargo bay, one person who had been acting strangely ever since they had brought the artifact on board. "Luke!" she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. She turned to face her first officer, her eyes searching his face for any sign of the man she had once trusted with her life. But all she saw was a stranger, a man consumed by a hunger for power that she had never seen before. "Why, Luke?" she asked, her voice trembling with betrayal and anger. "Why would you do this to us?" Luke smiled, a cold, twisted thing that sent shivers down Aria's spine. "You don't understand, Aria. The artifact's power is beyond anything we could have imagined. With it, we could rule the galaxy, shape it in our own image." Aria shook her head, disbelief and horror warring in her heart. "This isn't you, Luke. The man I knew would never betray his crew, his ship, for the sake of power." Luke's face hardened, his eyes glinting with a madness that Aria had never seen before. "The man you knew was weak, Aria. He was afraid to seize his destiny, to take what was rightfully his. But I'm not afraid anymore." With a snarl he lunged at her, a weapon clutched in his hand. Aria reacted on instinct, years of training taking over as she dodged and weaved, her own weapon drawn in a heartbeat. The bridge erupted into chaos as the two former friends clashed, their blades flashing in the dim light. Around them, the crew watched in horror, powerless to intervene as their leaders fought for control of the ship and the artifact that had brought them to this point. In the end, it was Aria who emerged victorious, her blade finding its mark in Luke's chest. As he lay dying, his eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and regret, Aria felt a tear slip down her cheek. "I'm sorry, Luke," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "I'm sorry it had to end this way." But even as she spoke the words, the ship shuddered beneath her feet, alarms blaring with renewed urgency. "Captain, we've lost main power!" Zara cried out, her voice laced with panic. "The artifact! It's gone critical!" Aria's eyes widened in horror as she realized the true extent of Luke's betrayal. In his mad grab for power, he had destabilized the very thing that had brought them here, and now they were all paying the price. As the Odyssey drifted helplessly through space, its systems failing one by one, Aria knew that they were in for the fight of their lives. The artifact's power was tearing the ship apart, and with it, any hope they had of finding their way home. But even in the midst of the chaos and despair, Aria couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. They had come this far, had sacrificed so much, and she would be damned if she let it all be for nothing. As the crew worked frantically to keep the ship together, Aria steeled herself for the challenges ahead. She had been tested before, had faced impossible odds, and come out stronger for it. And she knew that no matter what the future held, she would never stop fighting for her crew, her ship, and the truth that lay just beyond their reach. For in the end, that was all that mattered. And as the Odyssey hurtled towards an uncertain fate, Aria knew that she would give her last breath to see it through. Chapter 5. The Revelation. The Odyssey hung in space, a lifeless husk of its former self. Its once gleaming hull was now scorched and battered, a testament to the battles it had endured. Inside, the crew worked tirelessly to keep the ship's failing systems alive, their faces gaunt and haunted by the horrors they had witnessed. Captain Aria Vance stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the view-screen before her. The artifact that had once held such promise now lay dormant, its power spent in the cataclysmic events that had nearly torn the ship apart. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal," Lieutenant Zara Rowe said, her voice tired but determined. "It's coming from a nearby planet, and it's using the same frequency as the artifact." Aria felt a surge of hope rise in her chest. "Can we establish communication?" Zara nodded, her fingers flying across the console. "Opening a channel now." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a face that Aria had never seen before. It was an alien, its features strange and unfamiliar, but there was a kindness in its eyes that made Aria's heart ache. "Greetings, Captain Vance," the alien said, its voice soft and melodious. "I am Zoran of the Eldari. We have been watching you, and we know of the struggles you have endured." Aria felt a lump form in her throat. "You know of the artifact, then? Of the war that nearly destroyed your people?" Zoran nodded, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. "The artifact you possess is but a fragment of a much larger whole. It was created by our ancestors as a weapon, a last resort against an enemy that threatened to destroy us all." Aria's mind reeled with the implications. "The ones who attacked us, they're connected to this enemy somehow, aren't they?" "Yes," Zoran said, his voice heavy with regret. "They are the descendants of those who sought to use the artifact's power for their own gain, to dominate and enslave all those who stood against them." Aria felt a chill run down her spine. "And now they want it back." Zoran nodded. "The artifact's power is seductive, Captain. It promises greatness, but it only brings destruction. That is why we hid it away, why we erased all knowledge of its existence from our histories." "Arias," Mindra said with possibilities. "But if we could use its power for good, if we could find a way to harness it without being consumed by it." Zoran shook his head, a sad smile playing across his lips. That is the trap, Captain. The artifact's power is a double-edged sword, one that cuts both ways. To wield it is to risk losing oneself entirely.
Aria felt a wave of despair wash over. All this time, all this suffering, and for what? A weapon that could never be controlled. A power that could only bring ruin.
But even as she wrestled with her doubts, a new resolve began to take hold. The Odyssey had come too far, had lost too much to give up now. They had to find a way to end this, to stop the cycle of destruction before it consumed them all. "Zoran," she said, her voice steady and clear, "we can't let this happen again. We have to find a way to destroy the artifact, to make sure that its power can never be used for evil again." Zoran's eyes widened in surprise, but there was a glimmer of hope in their depths. "You would be willing to do that, Captain, to sacrifice everything you've fought for, everything you've suffered for, to ensure the safety of the galaxy?" Aria nodded, her jaw set with determination. "I would. We all would. That's what we signed up for, after all, to protect and serve no matter the cost." And as she spoke the words, Aria felt a sense of peace settle over her. They had been through hell and back, had lost friends and loved ones along the way, but they had never lost sight of what truly mattered. And as long as they held fast to that, as long as they stood together against the darkness, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. "Then let us begin," Zoran said, his voice filled with a new strength. "Together we will find a way to end this threat, once and for all, and in doing so we will honor the sacrifices of all those who have come before and all those yet to come." As the transmission ended, Aria felt a sense of hope kindle in her heart. The road ahead would be long and hard, but they would walk it together, united in their purpose and their resolve. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Chapter 6. The Transformation. The Odyssey sliced through the void, its engines thrumming with a newfound sense of purpose. On the bridge, Captain Aria Vance stood tall, her eyes fixed on the view screen before her. The weight of the past few months hung heavy on her shoulders, but there was a lightness in her step, a fire in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates Zoran provided," Lieutenant Zara Rowe reported, her voice steady and sure. "The artifact's energy signature is growing stronger by the second." Aria nodded, her jaw set with determination. "This is it, people. Our one chance to end this, once and for all. Let's make it count." As the Odyssey drew closer to the source of the energy, the ship began to shudder and shake, the artifact's power resonating through every bulkhead and beam. But Aria held fast, her grip on the armrests unwavering. "Steady as she goes," she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're almost there." And then suddenly they were through. The Odyssey emerged into a vast, shimmering expanse of light and colour, a realm beyond anything they had ever seen before. And there, at the centre of it all, was the artifact, pulsing with an otherworldly glow.
"Incredible," Zara breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's like nothing I've ever seen before."
But Aria barely heard her, her attention fixed on the task at hand. "All right, people, this is it." Zoran's instructions were clear. "We need to overload the artifact's core to release its energy in a controlled burst. That should be enough to destroy it, and any other fragments that might be out there." As the crew set to work, Aria felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. All her life she had been running, chasing after one goal or another, always striving to be better, to be stronger. But now, in this moment, she realized that she had already found what she was looking for. It was here, on the Odyssey, with this crew, this family that had been forged in the fires of adversity. And as the artifact's power began to build, as the Odyssey shook and shuddered with the force of the energy coursing through it, Aria knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. "Energy levels critical!" Zara cried out, her voice barely audible over the roar of the engines. "Captain, we need to move, now!" But Aria held fast, her eyes locked on the view screen before her. "Not yet," she said, her voice calm and steady. "Just a little longer." And then, with a blinding flash of light, it was over. The artifact exploded in a burst of energy, its power dissipating harmlessly into the void. And as the Odyssey emerged from the maelstrom, battered but unbroken, Aria felt a sense of triumph wash over her. They had done it. Against all odds, against all reason, they had saved the galaxy from a threat that had haunted it for millennia. And in doing so, they had proven that there was nothing they couldn't overcome, no challenge they couldn't face. As the crew erupted in cheers and applause, Aria felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Zara standing beside her, a smile on her face and tears in her eyes. "You did it, Captain," she said, her voice filled with pride and admiration. "You led us through the darkness, and you brought us back into the light." Aria shook her head, a smile playing across her own lips. "No, Zara, we did it. All of us, together, and that's something I'll never forget." And as the Odyssey set course for home, Aria knew that she had been forever changed by her experiences. She had learned the true meaning of leadership, of sacrifice, of the bonds that held a crew together through the darkest of times. And she knew that no matter what the future held, she would always carry those lessons with her, a beacon of hope and strength in a galaxy that needed it now more than ever. For the crew of the Odyssey had been forged in the crucible of adversity, had been tested and tempered by the fires of fate, and they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. They were a family, now and always, bound by the unbreakable ties of love and loyalty. And as the stars streaked by outside the view-screen, Aria knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers they might face, they would face them together, as one. For they were the crew of the Odyssey, and their journey was far from over.